folks, we're going to get started soon. I will post a timestamp down below when I am actually starting, but I'm going to give just a few minutes in case anyone's going to hop on and join me while I do this today. Hey there, just going to wait one more minute, just trying to figure out some settings on my end. Let me know if you're able to see and hear me okay. So let's just go ahead and get started. If folks need a refresher as they're hopping on, we can do that as well. Or of course, this video will be posted online for everyone to see. And so you can see here, I actually took some time, printed out my typeset, which I had not done previously, in its entirety. And I have divided it into 3 chunks here for myself. And I actually just went ahead and started sewing as well. And to give you an example of what it should look like, but also because I'm going to guillotine this later, and my guillotine, there is absolutely no way that I can fit this entire thing in there. It's not large enough. And so a technique that I use is to split it up into multiple parts. And it's something that I learned from Lady Bobbit, actually, and it was a very helpful technique, but this was also helpful for me showing you what it should look like when we actually go through and make these stitches. Alrighty, so we have 2 that I've already done, and then we have this 3rd piece that I'm going to do here. And what we're going to go ahead and do, if you don't have a guillotine, you're not going to split it up into multiple parts like this. Instead, you are going to just do it all in one go. And you'll notice that as I'm doing this as well, the same exact method that I've used on these 2, you'll just do through the entire typeset that you have all of the signatures. And so the things that you'll need for today are, of course, your signatures that you have folded and punched holes through at this point. And also, I'm realizing I might not even have punched holes through these. I am so embarrassed right now. Let's do that while we're talking through. But you're going to need your typeset, especially with holes punched through signature, unlike me, because we're going to go ahead and stitch through them. I'm going to take a few moments here to just do that on my end, but wondering if there might be anything specific that we can talk about today that could be helpful in the meantime. Look at that, I haven't done any of these. So if you're behind, this might be a nice little refresher for you as well. But with what we're going to do today, the pieces that you'll need, you'll probably need your awl or whatever kind of device you were using to poke holes. Again, because as you'll notice, not every time that we poke holes through it, if we're coming back after some time of having poked holes, it's very possible that your holes will close up or they will be much smaller than they were before. And that can be something that you need to remedy by re-poking the holes through. I had to do that a couple times on my other set that I went through and did earlier today, which was not a great idea now, since I'm poking holes in this set. And I'll probably just do a couple here to show you what it should look like. But you're going to need your awl. You're going to need a scissor to cut the thread that you're going to be using. You will need some kind of thread, hopefully waxed thread if you have it. If not, any thread will work. Just got to be really careful that you're not getting knots in the thread as you use it, because we tend to use really long pieces of thread when we go through and do this. And so you'll need thread. If you are making a very large bind, and what that means is something that is 1 inch or thicker for the spine, you will need linen tape like this right here. And you're also going to need some kind of heavy item to hold down your signatures as you stitch. And that's because it will help us keep everything nice and lined up as we're going through, rather than having things shift all over the place, which is a mistake I've made in the past. I promise it's much easier to just have something holding these signatures in place. Alrighty. And so if you're ready with all of that, just go ahead and gather your materials if you're joining me today in doing it, and we can make our stitches together. But essentially what we're going to do, if you are making a longer bind, like I am today, you're going to do 3 French links, which is what I had just shown earlier, and we'll do that again together. If you're making a shorter bind, something that's not thicker than 1 inch, that is perfectly okay as well. You can still use 3 French links for it. You probably don't need linen tapes if you're not rounding. And if you don't want to do 3 French links, if you want to see what it might look like to do another type of stitch for a spine that's 1 inch or less, I have another video tutorial up from the last bind along that I led folks through. And so you can very easily follow that as well and use that to guide you through the stitching process. I think punching holes is probably my least favorite part of the entire process. It feels so tedious having to go through and do all of this. And I was recently considering just doing a different kind of technique. I've seen folks using a X-Acto knife and just marking down the spine and cutting holes through all their signatures at once, and that's something that I want to try out as well. It looks like it would be much easier than this process here that I'm doing. Either way, needs to be done. You need holes in there to be able to stitch. And you'll probably see me going through and poking holes again in this set, just because they do close up fairly quickly, especially on such thick signatures. Just to warn that, I promise we'll get started on our sewing of the signatures. And if you've been following along in the other weeks when I have been folding, pressing, poking holes, you've probably heard me mention like how nervous I was about actually binding this Remain Nameless type set because it is very large and I used the wrong type of paper. But after pressing, it feels a lot more doable. We will probably do an Oxford Hollow spine together, and we'll get to see a new technique as well. You don't have to use it if you are not doing a large bind like me, but it'll be something cool that we do together that's a little bit different and will probably come in handy should you choose to do a large bind in the future. Okay. One more signature, we're almost there. The other piece you want to keep in mind as we are sewing is that we want to keep our signatures in order, and I've not been doing a very good job of that, unfortunately, but That is why when we were folding and poking holes, I told you to pile them up in a specific order, but that's something we will be mindful of as we stitch. This is not my favorite punch cradle because I can't really see exactly where the holes are falling. And that's okay again, because I'm not a perfectionist by any means when it comes to binding. As long as it's for my personal collection and it's only for me to have on my bookshelf and read, I don't really care all that much if it's not perfect. All right, here we go. Hopefully that didn't take too long. So what we're going to go ahead and do now, like I mentioned, let me show you what all of you will need. If you're doing a large bind that's 1 inch or larger, you need your signatures, right? Hopefully you punched holes through yours, unlike me. You're going to need linen tape, probably your awl again, to poke holes if you've noticed they've closed up, a scissor to cut your thread, a curved needle. You can use a straight needle as well, but my preference is just to use a curved one, and you'll see why as we're going through and doing this. And you will also need your thread, plus something heavy to actually be able to hold this, this down. Now, we're going to go ahead and start, and again, it's very, very, very important that you keep your signatures in order, because if you don't, your pages are going to be all whack when you are stitching this together, and your text block will not be readable. And so best way to do that is really to follow along and see where you're starting. So this is the last signature, and I always recommend just starting at the back and working your way to the front. So I've noticed 352 to 293, and so I'm going to start here. This is going to be the first one that I stitch. And you're going to take your thread, and again, preferably you have something waxed. This is not wax that I have here, so we're going to work with it. And what we do is typically I'll take as many number of signatures as I have is how many like pulls I'll take. So for example, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Now I want to show you what we do if we run out of thread, because that happens very, very often, and it's super easy to tie additional thread on. So I'm actually going to take a little bit less with the intention of showing you what to do when you run out of thread. So I'm taking, let's see, much less than I need, maybe half of that, and then we'll add extra on. So just take a little bit of thread, you're going to tie a knot as you normally would. I'm not sure how to really explain this process other than just tying a knot or a slip knot of some kind. And you just do that a couple of times to get it nice and thick. Make sure it's not going to go through that first hole that you have made in your signature. And we do that a couple of times. And really the knot just needs to be bigger than the hole in your signature. I always go just a teensy bit bigger to make sure there's no risk of it slipping through. That's usually how big I'll go. Let's see if you can actually see that there. You can go bigger if you want to, but that's kind of what I use. So you can see I have a really small piece of thread right now. Normally it will be running so long, my cat is always going after it and wanting to chase it. And then you're just going to thread your needle. All right, so we have the first piece done here. Now what we're going to do next, we're just going to start from the bottom of our last signature right here. And we stick our needle through. And you always want to make sure it's coming out in the middle of your signature. So you'll notice that first time it didn't for me, and I'm just looking around for that hole. There we go. Okay. So we have that there, pull through. And look at that, my knot was not big enough. That's what I was talking about. It will slip through if you're not large enough, so we'll just put through a couple more times. It did not happen for the other 2 sets that I made, but clearly I was a little generous with the hole that I made in this signature. We're just going to keep getting a teensy bit bigger. And I think another good way to do that, because this is not a very good knot that I'm making, is not to put it on the same spot every time. So you just build it in width instead. And I'm not doing a good job of showing you that right now. It always works out whenever I'm not on camera though. It's funny how that happens. But hopefully you have an easier time making a knot than I'm having. And you're just gonna do that. Okay, let's see if that holds. And we're just gonna go through our last hole there again. When we come out on this side, please stay. Oh, there we go. Okay. I'm not yanking on it too much because I don't want to test it. All right, so we went through. And again, this is for 3 French links to show you what that should look like. This right here is what 3 French links will look like. So that's number 1, 2, and 3. All right. And so we go through our second hole, come out the other side, and then we just keep going in and out. The first signature that we do is going to be really easy. There's nothing really happening here that is trying or hard, just in and out. If you have really thick signatures like I do, that's when it might be a little hard. And this is why I tell you to keep your awl, because if you can't get it through, you might just want to make a slightly bigger hole. So we are done with this first one. Alrighty. Now here is what you're going to do. You're going to grab your second signature, and again, you want to follow the page numbers to make sure they are in the correct order. I've made this mistake and had to cut everything loose and redo it, so please be mindful of the page numbers. 293, 292, we stack that on top, and this is when you put like a heavy item on top to keep it in place. I'm just going to use my nifty glue jar, and we're going to hold it there. So that okay. And we just go in and out. And again, what I'm doing is I've come out of this last hole here. On my first signature, I'm just going back in through the top hole of the second one, and I'm having to poke through it again. This is why I don't advise having such big signatures or using such thick paper. Okay, there we go. And what I'm actually going to do instead of using thick paper, what I prefer is to use a clip to hold my pages and signatures together. And that's because I'm often sitting like in front of the TV or with my family while doing this, and it's not reasonable for me to have a heavy item on my lap as I'm doing it, so I'll just clip that down. And that's something you can do as well. If you have like a large clip at home, binder clip, you can do that. And then we go in through the second hole, come out, and we are going back out. Okay, and so here's what we have so far. And this is where we make our first French link you're gonna see. We take our needle and we just stick it through the piece of thread that we had in the bottom 2 holes. And then we come out that way, and we go in through a second hole here. And you'll see my threads are loosening up. You can just tighten them. That's okay. We can make them all nice and snug before we tie these two off together. We come back and then we go out. And we do the same thing. We take our needle, we go in, under, just pull through, and then we go back into the next hole. And it's okay if everything is not snug right now, that's fine. We can always tighten it up, and then you go back out. Are folks able to see the camera and where my needle is going? I just want to make sure it's clear enough since it is kind of a smaller, more intricate detail. Okay. We came out, we go back under, and we are up and through already. And something I should have told y'all before, if I was smart in keeping track of this, is that this is where your linen threads or your tapes come in. But I'm gonna just finish this part here. Let me know if you have any issues seeing the French links that I'm making, and I can try to show in more detail. Okay, and then we go back out. And I'm going to tie this off in a minute here. I'll show you how to do that. But before we do that, I want to come back to the linen tapes because it's way easier to do it when we're starting off our stitching than if we try to do it later on. It's a real pain in the butt later. But the way that you measure these out, you're basically going to have the length of whatever your text block is, approximately. So we can see here that mine is, yay thick. And then you want about 1 inch on either side extra. And so what I'm actually going to do for anyone who didn't see before, because I have a really long one, it's going to be the same length as all of these plus 1 inch on both sides. So I'm just going to measure mine out. And you do this 3 times, one for each French length that you have. And it really just does have to be an approximation. You don't need to measure in inches or anything like that, as long as it is a good approximation. Perfect. And I'm just going to use that to measure out 3 times. Yours probably won't be anywhere near as long as mine because of the sheer size of the text block that I'm making. But let's measure that out. 3rd time. Okay, so I have 3 linen tapes now, putting these back out. And what you want to do is you want to slip them through these French links. And again, if I was smart, I would have done this before, but I haven't tightened anything up yet. And so you can see I'm just picking up those threads, slipping it under. And I'm going to do that 2 more times, one for each French length. And the reason we do this is because it helps us with the rounding when we are rounding our text blocks, especially large ones, that keeps them together, more cohesive. Oh, that is not one of them. And if you don't have linen tapes at home, you can probably use ribbon or something else. I haven't personally tested it myself, but I don't see why that wouldn't work. All right, so I have those in, and now you'll notice like my threads are really loose. And throughout this process, we're not trying to get them super tight. You'll notice here there is flexibility in my threads. They're not super tight. The glue will do that for us. We want some room to open the book and actually be able to read it, or the bind, I should say. And so we can go ahead and just pull the thread we have to the side. If you want, you can even grab a little and tighten it up. Okay, so now we have somewhat tight 2 signatures. And what we want to do to tie this off is we're going to take our loose end and our initial end that we have on the first signature and just tie a knot with them. Just do that twice. So we have, again, make sure it's nice and tight and snug, and just tie a knot. There we go. And I like to do one more just for extra measure. There we go. All right, now it's nice and tight. You'll notice it's not moving around. It is snug, good to go. It's ready for the next signature we're going to add to the top. All right. And so making sure my page numbers line up, 234, 231. Perfect. Alrighty. And where did my needle go? And if your needle falls off, you can just thread it again, obviously. There we go. And what we do now is we go back in to our next hole. Signature. Make sure it comes out to be and I'm actually going to move this clip so that it's holding all three in place together. So we've gone in, we come back out, and you are going to want to just, whatever you do next, go around kind of the linen tape. But we're gonna do our French link again. And so what we do this time is we take our needle, we go through that second signature, that thread you see there, just that one. We're not going through both sets, just the second. And we come out, and I have lost my needle again. And then you're gonna go around the linen tape. So you'll see here, I'm accounting for this linen tape, going around it and back into the next hole. If I can get it through. And back out. And you'll see for this one, I've now captured this linen tape in the French link that we've done. So we go through, again, just that second thread, the one that was going through for the second signature. We don't want to do both. We come out and I keep losing my needle. This is what happens when you use a really short piece. This is why you want to do long pieces of thread. But again, this is an intentional choice on my part. And you go around the linen tape, back in. And back out. And there's one more unique type of stitch that we are going to do together in a minute here. It's called the saddle stitch. But after that, it becomes fairly repetitive, but I'll also show you how to tie off at the end once we're done. And so you can see I'm looking for that second thread right there, going through that, pulling out, and going back in around the linen tape. I want to account for the linen tape, and I go back in. And the reason that I'm doing this is because it is really hard to put linen tape through once your stitches are nice and tight. I have done it before because I've accidentally yanked out my linen threads, and I promise it is so inconvenient. It took me more than an hour to do that, and it was for a much smaller bind. Okay. And it has come out again. So what I'm actually going to do now at this point, you don't have to do it at this point, I am choosing to because it's going to make my life easier, show you what to do when you run out of thread. So at this point, you're going to grab more thread. You're going to grab more thread, and I'm going to recommend take like a more generous amount. I intentionally, again, did not do that, but I am taking more than I think I need because I can always use it up later in a mini bind. Okay, so I have a really, really long piece you can see now. I can't capture it on camera, but you can see me pulling it. And what you do is you're going to just tie again, a knot right here. And it's hard to show how to do that on camera. I'm going to try to show you, but I tie a simple knot around that thread. Okay. And so you'll see now there is a really tiny knot right there, right? But the problem here is it's not tight. If I yank this thread, the other piece is going to move around. It's not sturdy at all. So you can see, right, it's going to come out. So what we want to do is we really want to tie it multiple times. I'm going to try to get it closer to. Okay. And I actually made a mistake right here. Don't be like me. Let's get this off. You can see that came out. That didn't hold at all. So let's do that again. And we want to get the knot as close to this inner piece as possible because it's going to make our life easier, and you'll see why in a minute. But go ahead and tie the knot again and get it as close to the base as you can. Just push it back in there. And you want a bit of a longer tail. Okay, so you can see it is nice and flush by that hole in the signature, and we want to keep it that way. And we tie it just a couple times with the different tails that are there. This is not scientific by any means. I'm sure there's a better way to explain this, but we just tie the different tails multiple times to get it nice and tight and make sure that new piece of thread holds. So I've tied that. I'm also going to use this longer end of the piece that I have because I found that it makes for a tighter knot. Again, I don't know how to explain this scientifically, which hurts my soul a little bit, but it works, and so we're just going to go with it. So you take these smaller tails, tie them with the bigger tail as well, and I'm going to do that same thing again with the other and just get it in there. Okay, and you'll see now when I pull on this, it's not coming loose. It is tight in there, and that is exactly what we want. We want that second thread to be nice and tight when we go in. I'm not going to bother cutting these tails off at this point because we can just glue them in later. So we have this nice long piece of thread, and you're going to go ahead and thread that needle with the new piece of thread you have. And again, you might not have to do this right at the same point that I'm at, but I promise you at some point of your bookbinding journey, you're not going to use enough thread to tie all your signatures together, and a big chunk of that again is that if your thread is too long, it will get knotted, and undoing those knots takes an ungodly amount of time. So it's important to know how to add extra thread on. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. Another new thing, right, when we are tying our next signature together. So these first two that you saw, we just tied a simple knot a couple times. But the next piece that we do, there's nothing here for us to knot to, you'll notice. And so what we do instead is something called a saddle stitch. And let me show you what that means. So what we're going to do is take our needle, put it through that thread right there between signatures 1 and 2. And I'm going to hold this end right here of the thread that's coming out and just slip a finger through and just pull. And the purpose of this finger being here is I don't want to close this loop completely, right? I want to have this loop right here before I pull tight and snug. And what I do then is I take this longer piece that's connected to my needle, I stick my needle through this loop, and then I'm going to pull that closed right there. And I realize I might not be explaining that well, and I see there are folks who've joined me, so feel free to let me know if it's confusing. We're going to do it one more time. So we typically do 2 saddle stitches, at least I do, for each signature we add on. So let's do that again. So next time what we're going to do, instead of signatures 1 and 2, we do it one level higher right here between signatures 2 and 3. We take our needle, we go through, and I'm going to hold one end because I don't want the loop to close, right? I'm going to hold it and just go through. Get it nice and tight. And the way that we can tighten it without actually closing the loop is to pull this other end right here, which is where we last came out. I'm going to pull that, and we just again close that loop by pulling the thread that is on the needle side. And just get it nice and tight. And that closes it up. It's not going to be the tightest knot that you've seen. That's okay. Again, we need a little bit of flexibility there. And so that is 2 saddle stitches that we have, not just the extra. There, okay. We have 2 saddle stitches there, right? We could do it again if you wanted to make it even more snug. It doesn't do any harm whatsoever. And again, you don't need to, but let's do it just for the sake of practice. I slip my needle in. I'm holding one end of the thread so the loop doesn't close. And I'm just going to get it nice and snug and slip the needle through that loop, come back out, and again, close the loop. And you can see I'm like yanking on the loop a little bit as well to tighten it, and there we go. Okay, nice and snug. And whatever flexibility there is with your thread, it is just going to help out when you read the bind, I promise. And the glue will help tighten everything up even further. So don't worry if there is a little bit of looseness. It's not the tightest you've seen. I also haven't pressed these since poking the holes. So, all right, 173, 172, we add our next signature on. And I'm going to go ahead, open up this clip, or if you're using a heavy item, just go ahead and place it on top of this new signature. And close up. And then we are going back up through our next hole, like we have been doing this entire time, easy peasy. Out, or come in, I guess, and pull tight. And you'll notice like I'm getting resistance because my linen tapes are coming in the way. It is harder when there are extra things that you're working around. So just pull snug. And then we go back out in the next hole. And again, tight. Just make sure there's snug fit. And then we're going to do our French link again. So what that means, if you remember, is we go through the thread of the next, the signature before the one we had just added on. And so this third level, I just go underneath that one piece of thread. I'm not going through all of them, just that one. And pulling. And avoiding all the other linen tapes. That's a bit of a process, as you'll notice. Okay. Right. And then we go back in. Make sure we're accounting for that linen tape and going in at our next hole. And you'll want to make sure, you'll notice I'm being careful, you're coming out in the middle of the signature. It is very easy to come out like at another place. For example, if you come out here, you're not going to gather all the pages in your signature, so just make sure you're coming out at the middle. Go back out. And you'll also notice I'm moving kind of slowly because I'm trying not to knot my thread. I am not using waxed thread right now, and so the chances of it getting knotted are very easy. And it's much easier, I mean, it's much better to take your time initially rather than have it knot and then spend like 15-20 minutes having to unknot it. So just go slow, especially the first couple times you do it. So we're going to do our next French length, going through that third thread that was there and pull out. And we want to make sure we're going around the linen tape. Okay. And we go again through the next one. Make sure we're coming up in the middle. It really shouldn't be as hard as it is for me because your signatures probably won't be as thick. Okay. And we go back out. And so I think there's really three kind of stitches you need to master to be able to do this. The first one being the French length that we've seen so many times, the saddle stitch, which we do at the ends to tie everything together, and then a simple knot, really. I feel like there's another name for that that I'm forgetting right now. Just a simple knot to make sure you're able to add extra thread, tie those first two and last signatures together, and then we go around the linen tape. And I'm just using my needle to poke a hole, not to get too confusing. Sometimes if I'm feeling lazy and I don't want to pull my awl over to do that, I'll just use my needle. Okay. Yank and back out. And we have about 2 more signatures left that we're gonna add in into the, okay. And you'll see here, this is kind of what I mean. Your linen tapes will get cut and just yank them out if that does happen. Not the whole thing, just the little tail piece there. Again, it's something I've done. Don't make my mistakes. Learn from them. Okay. So we do our saddle stitch again. I'm just going to get everything as tight as possible. We don't want to yank it too hard, but we do want it decently tight. And so we take our needle, we go through, and I'm holding, again, you'll see I'm holding this end of the thread right here. I'm just pulling. And you're going to take your needle, you're going to slip it through this knot, and you'll notice I haven't closed it out yet. I'm still keeping my finger there, and that's because I want to tighten it up one more time. And so I'm just yanking on this end of the loop to get it nice and tight. And then I yank the long end and close it. There we go. And just pull as tight as you want to. Just be careful not to snap your thread. Okay. And then we do it one more time. We go under this next layer. You'll notice my finger is on the thread right here. Right? And we take this needle. We go through the loop that we've made. And we pull back out. And just make sure it's as snug. Oh, there we go. See, I made a mistake. That's what I was talking about. It's easier to take your time than make a mistake and create a knot like I did right here. I don't know if I'm actually going to be able to fix this while I'm on camera with y'all, which is the challenging part. It is so tiny, but the loop won't close up, which is why you can't go fast like I was doing just now. While I'm doing this, feel free to let me know if there's anything you want me to go over, if there's anything that doesn't make sense. Let's see. I'm also kind of inclined, my patience is a little short right now with this process specifically, and so undoing the knot feels more daunting and irritating than it normally would. But I really, and I don't want to do this on camera because it could take me anywhere from 15 to 20 minutes to get this knot undone. Can you see how small it is? This tiny, tiny knot right there is not going to let me close the loop. let's see, maybe what we can do instead is just do another French link. I'm experimenting on camera right now, so feel free to ignore what I'm doing. I will tell you if it works successfully, but instead of undoing that entire knot, let's see if I can saddle stitch my way out of it. Maybe it will. I think it's working. It worked successfully. Yay. Okay, so what I did instead of fixing this knot, this is my first time doing it, is I just made another saddle stitch through these other layers right there. So we're going to go through and we're going to saddle stitch again between these top two signatures. I'm going to go slowly this time because you can see what happens when you're not going slowly. And that's why I held the loop go through and close, because I want to make sure there are no tiny knots. Okay. And again, you might not have the prettiest stitching as you're going through on the side, and that's okay, because none of this will be visible when you actually go through, glue it, and have a case on top of it. All right, we take our next signature. This is our second to last, so we are thankfully very close to being done. And we go, the first step is actually fix this clip. Or if you're putting a heavy item on top, just put that on top as well. There we go. And after a while, I don't know about for others, but my hands and my eyesight start to not be the greatest, and so I do like taking breaks from the actual process. But we're gonna get through this all together. And this isn't even that long, it's just 6 signatures. Okay, we do our French link, going through that thread. And we go around our linen tape through the next hole. Do the same thing, another French link, and we go around our tape back in. What have folks been reading recently? I have been really into Twilight fiction. I got sucked back into it after many, many years by firstly watching the movies again on Netflix, and then I realized my tastes had changed as I had gotten older, and so went back in and explored other fics that were to my liking and to my ears. But oftentimes, I feel like whenever I find a really good fic, it's hard for me to bind anything because all I want to do is read. Especially if it's hard when there isn't a pop fic of something specific. But I have been reading so much, and so binding has really taken a second. Let's see, okay. We come back out. And so saddle stitch again. Let's walk through it. We go underneath. I'm going to hold one end of the thread so that it doesn't close. Make sure the linen tape's not in the way. And then take my needle, slip it through, and I'm gonna help it go through really slow, because you saw what happens when I don't, right? You can knot up. And then we do it one more time through. And I keep my finger here so it doesn't close up. We go through the loop. And I'm going to loosen that actually. I don't feel too great about that loop. Something about it tells me there's going to be a knot that's going to make my life miserable. But you're going to just walk it through slowly. And I'm actually not happy with how loose that is, so I'm just going to go through, do 2 more saddle stitches for my own peace of mind. It's a little bit snugger, you can see. All right. We are on our last signature, so we're going to close everything up here. It'll be a little bit different when we get to the end here, but let's just go ahead and do what we were doing for normal. Firstly, I'm going to change this binder clip to include and we're just going to do what we were doing before, per usual, our French lengths. And you can see that hole has closed up. Oh, it's not even the hole. Look at that. I was not going through the middle right there, but we are going to. Okay. And come out. And you will already know everything you need to close this up. We're just going to combine a couple different things that we have done across today's live to close all our signatures up together. Make sure that doesn't tug. And you can tell my holes that I've poked have not been the neatest. And again, that's because I am truly of the philosophy, like, all of this is handmade. If it's for yourself, who cares? It shows that you made it with love. And that is much better than anything you could do printing, like a commercial. And also, don't do that, because I'm not supposed to do that with fanfic. It's a gift. Don't spend money on it. All right. And then we do our last French length and come through. There are other ways. Again, this is not the only type of stitch that you'll see people do. I have another tutorial up for lines that are smaller. This is just what I find holds up the best for really large vines like the one that I'm making. And then come back up. Okay. Alright. And we just tighten it up and make sure that our linen tapes are being And so I'm going to recommend just like pull on the thread. You see me kind of doing it off the screen, but just pull on the thread and get it tight. And now what we do is we're going to do anywhere between, I want to say like 3 to 4 saddle stitches and then tie up a simple knot. I have personally found that it doesn't matter what order you do it in. I just prefer to do it the way that I do all the other ones. And so I'm going to go through and start with that initial bottom 2 that I would, the loop, go through, and just tighten it up. Tighten everything up. And when you're doing this, when you have needle and thread in your hand, you'll be able to feel how tight it gets. More right here. See, this is tight, but it is not as tight as we would like to tie off. And so we're going to do this, and for me personally, I do this at least a couple of times. I go back down even one level lower and do another saddle stitch. And the amount of thread you have left at the end will also dictate how many stitches you can really do. I just go through, do them a couple times to get it nice and tight. And then I work my way back up to this last one here. I think I did like 5 saddle stitches right there. And I'm really not happy with this last one now, I'm realizing. I don't normally do this many, but I'm going to go ahead and do it. Because I'd rather be safe than sorry and have it all come apart. Alright. And I'm actually just going to stop there, and we're going to tie this off now. I've taken off my needle, put it aside, and just like we did between signatures 1 and 2 at the bottom there, we are now going to grab the 2 pins, just tie a knot. And the point again is just to make sure it doesn't come loose. There we go. Okay. Sorry for that, I was getting a call. Okay. And we just make sure our linen tapes are nice and neat. I think I might have messed something up here. I'm pretty sure I made a mistake right there. And I'm going to have to fix that. And that's why you should not rush through like I have here. Take your time, make sure things are looking okay. And I'm going to go through and fix it. Okay. And you can see the mistake I made is I didn't tighten that enough. And that's okay. If there's one thing you take away from this entire ride along that I'm going to say time and time again, mistakes happen. They will continue to happen. Almost nothing you do is irreparable, right? Glue will fix this. When we go through and glue it, it will be okay. And so just know, like, have that little bit of comfort that any mistake you make, there 99.9% of the time will be a fix. There's almost nothing you can do in this process that is going to ruin a bind completely. And so I just cut off kind of this excess here. I leave a little bit because I like to glue it in, and that's what it looks like. So that is what I have. And again, my linen tapes are slightly longer because I have these other textbooks that I'm going to combine all into one. But you don't have to know how to do that. I'm assuming no one is doing something as long as I am right now for this. And let's crack it open. Yeah, you'll see it's loose. And that's okay. It's meant to be that way. The glue will tighten it all up. See this one where I didn't make any mistakes. It's loose. The glue will tighten it up. That's okay. We just trust the process, right? And so I have these three here. And what we're going to do next time, just to kind of keep in mind that some homework this week, is to just stitch everything up. Use linen tapes if you need, if you're going to be rounding. And the next time that we meet, what we're going to do is glue everything together and also round our spine if you are making a bind that's big enough to round, like I am here. This is massive. This was a kind of mistake, but we're going to round it and hopefully it will be all right. And so those are kind of the two big pieces that we'll be doing next time. I think part of that process as well that we will likely do after rounding is to talk about how we add on our end papers. You can probably do that before as well if you want to, before you even round. But that's kind of what we'll be doing next time. So have some kind of cardstock or decorative paper that you want to add as your end papers. For example, this is what I mean when I say end paper, right? It's the pages that we have right here before we actually dive into a fic. And that's upside down. But it's at the start and at the back. And so we'll add our end papers, we'll glue our spines, and we will round the spines as well if you need to. So you will need your glue. I'm going to be using PVC, some kind of spatula to glue it on. You will also need, let's see, a hammer if you're rounding your spine, and you will need your press to make sure everything is nice and tight in there. Let's see. And end papers, we'll probably talk about that next week as well. Let's plan on that. Alrighty. Any questions or anything else that is confusing right now? I haven't seen any comments so far, so I'm going to assume not. If there is anything, feel free to let me know.